Hey guys, so in this video, I want to talk about a big thing to keep in mind when setting up your backyard garden, and that is to try to spread out your harvests as much as possible so you can eat homegrown fruit for as long as possible. Now, this is obviously geared towards people who live in the tropics or subtropics, since for those of you that have to deal with winters, there's not much you can do unless you have a heated greenhouse. So as much as I'd love to have my yard completely full of mango trees generally only fruit once a year during fruiting season, so that would give me hundreds or even thousands of mangoes all at once, which is not quite ideal. So what you want to do is try to select trees that will not all fruit at the same time. The ideal scenario for me would to always have some kind of fruit ready for picking. Something also to keep in mind is that different varieties of the same type of tree can also fruit at different times of the year, which I'll talk more about later when I get to my mango trees. Now, the first thing to note is there are trees that will fruit throughout the year. The two big ones for South Florida actually aren't even real trees, those being bananas and papayas. As far as I know, banana and papaya trees don't have any sort of set seasons and will produce fruit year-round, although I do believe their growth rate does slow down a bit in the winter. But I've harvested both bananas and papayas throughout the winter, so those are definitely winners. There are some other trees like Sapodillas that may bear some fruit throughout the year, but they still have a main fruiting season when most of the fruit will be ready. So let's get into it, starting at the beginning of the year. If you want fresh fruit in January, the big tree here is the Starfruit or a carambola tree. I just bought my first Starfruit, a Carry variety. It's still in a pot, but I'll be planting it in the ground soon. The cool thing about Starfruit is that they have two main fruiting seasons, one being December through February, and another in the late summer, around August or September. I especially recently bought my tree because this past January, when I had nothing growing, I was super jealous of seeing the other starfruit trees in my neighborhood loaded with fruit. The winter months is also when citrus ripens. There are tons of different kinds of citrus that could ripen anywhere from November through the spring, but generally January is kind of the average season. As I've noted in previous videos, citrus is troublesome here because of the greening disease, but I recently got a sugar bell mandarin which is supposedly resistant to the disease and which fruits in November, so I'll mention that again later. So moving into the spring, we get to Loquat season. I have a 2-year-old Oliver Loquat tree which just recently gave me a small crop this year, actually beginning in February, and into early March. Loquat trees grow very fast, are very productive, look attractive, and best of all, they produce really delicious sweet fruit. I think this was an early Loquat season, as normally I think they're supposed to fruit like March through May. The spring months is also when Sapodillas are usually ready to pick here in Florida. My little Silas Wood Sapodilla gave me a really nice crop last March and April, and it looks like I'll have another nice crop this spring. I highly recommend the Silas Wood variety, as it's a dwarf tree, a very young producer, and a heavy producer of such delicious, incredibly sweet fruit that just tastes like biting into brown sugar pie. I also have a little macaque sapodilla tree, which is growing pretty slow, but it's putting out really nice new growth right now with flowers, so I'm hoping that starts producing some fruit soon too. Going into May, we start getting into mango season and the rest of the summer fruits. Let's start with mangoes. There are many different mango varieties with all different characteristics, including when they bear fruit. Mid-mango season, when the vast majority of the varieties are ready to pick, is about June and July. However, there are early varieties which fruit in May and even April, and late varieties that fruit in August and into September. Some early varieties include Rosy Gold, which is known to be the first fruiter of the season, often in April, although I've seen people online picking their fruit in March, and also Edward, which fruits in May. It seems there are more late bloomers than early bloomers, with some of the known late bloomers being both Kit and Kent, which you could actually find in grocery stores pretty commonly in August and September, with some other common backyard late varieties being Venus, Beverly, and the one I have, Honeykiss. Honeykiss is actually a seedling of Kent, which is where it gets its late season characteristic, but it's also a compact grower, it produces heavy crops, which is why I went for it. My other 3 trees, Alfonso, Pickering, and Coconut Cream, are all mid-season June and July bearers, although last year I was actually picking a bunch of Alfonsos in mid-May. Another summer fruit is jackfruit, which has a similar season with mangoes. My tree is a golden nugget, which is supposed to be an early variety, bearing fruit in May to June. My tree is growing very fast, it's already over 10 feet tall, but it still hasn't flowered yet. Jackfruit is cool because you can pick it underripe and use it as a meat substitute, or you can wait until it ripens when it becomes very sweet and good to eat on its own. Getting into the fall months, my biggest producer at this time of the year has been figs, which give a really nice big crop of delicious fruit in September. And then they also give sporadic fruit throughout the year, but definitely September is the big crop. I also have a soursop tree, which is flowered but hasn't held fruit yet. From what I've read, soursops can bear fruit all summer, but tend to have their biggest crops toward the fall months. Then late fall into winter is when my new sugar bell mandarin tree should produce fruit, hopefully in the next couple years. And that brings us back to December and January season for starfruit. One other fall fruit to mention is avocados. Although I don't grow them, but they are very popular here in Florida. Avocados are cool because they mature in the fall, but they actually don't fall off the tree, so you can leave them on throughout the winter until you're ready to pick them. When I started my garden, this wasn't a topic I had thought through at all, but as my garden grew, this definitely became a big factor, and now it's basically the biggest factor I account for, with my two latest trees being the sugar bell mandarin and the starfruit, two trees which bear fruit November through January, which is the time of year that I was sorely missing fruit from. So hopefully you keep this in mind as well, and you're able to harvest fruit year-round. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.